All right, good morning. Yeah, good afternoon. Just testing you guys to see whether you guys are awake or not. First of all, thank you for coming to the session. Thank you for making it. I know many of you guys are probably looking for some excitement today. How's NSBE been going so far for you guys? Good? Any surprises? Any excitement? Nothing? I'm going to make this an interactive session because I know you guys have been sitting, listening to a lot of people talk about nothing and everything at the same time. So this session, I'm really hoping you guys get a chance to learn a little bit more around the future of work and how AI will impact the workforce. My name is Alfred Ojukwu. I am a surface specialist out of New York, by the way of Connecticut. I am also a Microsoft certified trainer. And I'm joined here with my colleague.
I'm Angela Clayton, and I work in Azure Security. I'm out of the Washington, D.C. office, and I'm a senior program manager.
And today we want to spend some time to kind of go over when we talk about AI and generative AI, what are those things? How does that fit into what you're doing today? Now, out of curiosity, how many people came to the session yesterday? Again, I would remember because I saw the faces, but how many people remember coming to the session yesterday? We had a course on fundamentals of AI as well as security in AI. The intention of that course was to give you an opportunity to learn a little bit more about what we provide from a technology standpoint. In this session today, we're going to go a little bit deeper into talking about how it has changed the industry and what we can do with it in terms of job opportunities, workforce opportunities, and we'll also give you a chance to connect with us so that if you're looking for those sort of scenarios, we can help out as well. But before we dive into that, what I want to be able to do is give you guys a sort of a brief understanding of AI. Now, how many people are in the AI space today? Work in the AI space? Now, everybody's hand should be rising right now. Why? You use it every day. If you've got a cell phone right now, there's AI built into it. If you're, calling your boss telling me you're at NSBE right now, you're using AI, right? So it's already integrated into everything we do. It's a matter of understanding how to adopt it and make it part of how we think about solutions and products. So let's go into that. So one thing that we probably didn't do a good job of saying is we both worked at Microsoft.
Oh, okay.
Right. So I've been at Microsoft for about 13 years, and
I've been there about 1.5 years.
And our roles are and our roles are slightly different. However, it doesn't matter what role you're in. You'll probably see that there's a lot of interaction. Love the updates, right? It's fun. There's a lot of understanding around AI as being part of it. So Microsoft's approach to AI, as you can see here, is we are essentially investing our technologies, our solutions, because we believe that there's going to be an optimistic outcome by us making sure that AI is integrated into our products, into our technologies, and the people that actually use it. And you'll see that in everything you do. From a Microsoft perspective, that's what we typically do. And it's really also good to understand that, when we talk about meeting the AI in the moment, the AI moment, what it is, we also have to take into consideration the responsibility aspect of using AI responsibly. And myself and Angela, you'll hear some of that later on as we dive into it. So we wanted to make sure that we talk about how that is being leveraged in the industry, as well as making sure that we understand that it is very much a competitive when it comes to national security, and it's top of mind. Now, if we dial the notes back a little bit, this kind of will take us a little further into what is AI? Where did it come from? How many people think AI is something that's just happened in the last 10 years? How about maybe last 30 years? About 2000, right? You guys are 2000 babies? Last 50 years. Just like, not me. I'm a grown man. Last 50 years. There's a couple of hands here. So it's been around since around the 1950s, right? It's just changed names so many times. It may seem as if we're entering into what we call a new era of technology, but really it's the same old thing. And we put a different label on it and added a few more buttons and widgets. And a lot of us are figuring out how to do it. Even CEOs are looking at it as if it's a brand new thing. But the beauty of it is that, as we explore what it's capable of doing, what we find is that there's so much more they can do with it. So here we can see that Alan Turing invented the Turing test to determine if computers could pass for a human in written linguistic fluency. That was the goal here, right? And so that was really where things kind of started digging into. And as we move forward in 1959, you'll see that machine learning became sort of the standard.
And in 1960s, we had the invention of the general problem solver, which no one calls it that. Everyone calls it a GPS. And we also had the ELIZA program, which the ELIZA program was actually a psychotherapist program, which you can input stuff into a machine and it would tell you how you feel. And it would, it was a lot of problems with it, though, because people were, offing themselves because the computer was telling them, oh, you shouldn't feel depressed, or that person is the person making you feel depressed. So it was a lot of problems with the system as at that time, as well as the GPS system, which is a satellite problem solver. And that one does imagery, but everyone has seen the evolution of GPSs from using MapQuest to now it's accessible on your phone.
Moving on to 06, right? We start seeing more of that in the University of Toronto, where they invented what we call the fast learning algorithm, what we call deep learning. Anybody heard of deep learning, the term deep learning before? How would you define deep learning?
Recognizing patterns in that information and then extrapolating from those patterns that it established.
No, that's and right on target. So examples like this would be, where we take a phone algorithm and basically figure out a way to reduce the amount of noise in the background. So that deep learning became something that of a centralized approach at finding opportunities. And then lastly, generative AI, which you'll hear us talk about a lot. Generative AI is probably the core of where we start thinking about how do we get information? How do we build data? How do we use the data that we have from a request standpoint and pull out information? So you'll hear more about that. So it's not a new thing. And I know that there was something you mentioned around work that you were doing in the past.
Yes. In 2005, 2004 and 2005, I did senior design projects on neural networks. So although deep learning is now the term, it was just called neural networks. So neural networks are matrixing. So the thing I did was butterfly networks, where I was matrixing doing Fourier transforms. Basically, everybody knows what Fourier transform is. So that's what I was doing in 2006. Also, you also had the invention of the Jetsons in the 60s, and that was something that's like in 2026. And so as we see, as you look back at the Jetsons cartoon, you can kind of see how generative AI was in play. Somebody forethought that, and everything that's was in the Jetsons has pretty much, except for flying cars, has come to life now.
And that's just some of the examples. Again, one thing that I want to point out about what Angela mentioned is, although those are things that she did, sometimes when you look at the technology and you hear what they're talking about, they don't include that information in what we learn. And part of the reason why we have you all here is we want to be able to ensure that inclusiveness happens when technology is documented, written, leverage for data gathering, and you'll see some examples of that as well. So what's in the name? We asked the question, what's in the name? And in this specific scenario, we're talking about two different, what artificial intelligence, what does it mean? And it's just a broad set of techniques, as you can see here, used to train computers. That's what AI is intended to do. And the large language model, which is basically the idea that you have information that's available for you to pull from, so you can do language translations, being able to generate code, being able to use SQL code and turn it into natural language. So many different things that you can do with it. So we have the generative piece, being able to generate content, the pre-trained content, which means that the model has already been trained for large models. And then lastly, just the transformer, being able to take it from one instance to another. So these are pieces that we at Microsoft have built into our technologies. And you'll hear a little bit more about that. Microsoft isn't the only one doing this, and I'm just going to be frank, but I can guarantee you that we're one of the first that are essentially figuring out ways to integrate it deeply into the product stack and ensure that when you are using these tools, you get the most out of it. And one of the ways we've done that is we've partnered with OpenAI. Anyone familiar with OpenAI? Hopefully everyone should be raising their hand right now. And if you're not, that's probably why you're here, right? OpenAI is a long-standing partner with Microsoft. And in January 2023, we announced just a multi-year, multi-billion-dollar opportunity investment where we could partner with them on huge amounts of talent to drive just any sort of foundational research. So that partnership has led to us building it into the supercomputing scale, making sure we have new AI experiences. And a lot of our technology you'll see fits into that. And with that, what you'll see in the platform as well as on the web are there different ways you're going to be able to access that information. In this case, you'll see us talk about GPT-3 and GPT-4, which are the latest processes that you can use for generative AI as well. You see Codex, where you're basically using it to be able to identify code and build code. DALL-E for imagery generation. And again, and ChatGPT, which is basically for conversational responses. These are things that are going to become sort of the mainstream of what we do. And you're probably thinking, well, how do I get that? What do I need to do to make sure I can use it? You have access to it. If you typed in ChatGPT right now, you could probably go to the web and access that information. Now, this was founded in about 2015 by Sam Altman and Elon Musk and a few others. The mission in itself was synergy. How do we bring all these tools together so that we can have a central place, a simplified way of getting information? And Microsoft was also interested in making sure that feature was taken advantage of. Not so much so that we've also spent a lot of time building it into our product. And I'm not going to go to this extensive list, but this is where those investments are happening. Speech recognition, reading, and comprehension, being able to do neural language modeling. I know some of these terms are probably foreign for some of you guys, but get used to that language. You'll hear it come up inside and out. If you're an engineer, if you're a sales, if you're in customer success, these are terms that you're going to have to make sure that you educate yourself on as it pertains to OpenAI and any technology around generative AI. We've even continued up until March, making sure that the product itself is fit into some of the cloud. Our cloud platform is Microsoft Azure. In that Azure platform, we use things like cognitive services, a number of machine learning, all of that built into it. If you're an engineer looking for opportunities to sort of develop, Mike, and
you'll want to consider some of these services that we provide, from Azure OpenAI services to Microsoft's technology like Bing, and also thinking about nuanced DAX as an express solution. Bing Image Creator, also coming new to HIMSS, and you can see across the product stack, we're essentially integrating it into our platform and making it just more readable for easily accessible for anyone. So that's the design. This is just the beginning of what the age of AI holds in store for us as we continue to pursue our vision to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. So we're excited about this, and we hope that you are also just as excited.
And what you're looking for. So in this case, we're listing out some of those ideas. Keep in mind is that this is just the beginning stages. We're going to see a lot more limitless generation with just a few lines of input. If you're a coder, if you're using Python, if you're using SQL, if you're using any back-end systems, you may be one of these people building this technology into the generative AI. And that's important for us because that's really what we're looking for, is people that have those skills and are willing to invest the time to figure it out. And these services, these new AI services, are really designed to do things like natural language chatbots, as we mentioned earlier, advanced search capabilities. So if I want to put in specific text and look up information, I can do that. I can generate text just without any problem, or real-time conversations that are happening. Again, just mention that because it's important. And last piece I'll mention, I won't go too far into this. These are some of those capabilities that we're building into our Microsoft platform. And in order to keep this from being just about Microsoft, we're going to keep going.
But also, like, to carry on to this point, one of the things that we did, we used ChatGPT to create most of these slides.
Which we'll talk
so yeah, we'll talk about that later. But we also want to just let you know that that's one of the things that you can use ChatGPT for. You can actually ask it to build you a PowerPoint presentation. You can give it the topic and it will create some things. Now, the Problem is, you have to go and do research to make sure that the content is given to you, because ChatGPT will confidently lie to you and give you misinformation. So
Therein lies why we're here, is to understand how can we make it give us truthful data? How can we ensure that it's actually giving us the information that we ask for? So let's go into a little bit more around just high level. What is generative AI from a standpoint of a technology perspective? Now, this is just about trust. We talk. How many people have access to Azure subscription in Azure? Anybody? Good. And the beauty of it is, once you have that Azure subscription, what we're doing is giving you access to your data. Now, if you're interested, there's also access to, I think, $200 or $150 worth of free Azure credit that you can actually start to use to learn about cognitive services, AI technologies in the cloud, and sort of familiarize yourself with what's out there in case you don't have that experience. And we also have online options for people to actually, skill yourself up and then take the exam, so that you can actually write that into your resume that you've learned that skill and you have that understanding. But part of that is making sure you understand that the platform that you're using is secure, and it ensures that everything that we're doing is built on that security model. The other side of that is understanding what Microsoft's responsible AI principles are. When we talk about responsible AIs, first, you need to think about governance. Governance is a big part of it. How am I going to manage the information and who's going to have access to it? Second, you need the rules to standardize all the AI requirements. In other words, what can I actually run? What kind of information can I input on here? Third, you need the training. You need the training and the best practices in terms of how do I follow the right details around what I can input and how can I put it? And lastly, you just need the tools for the implementation. And the tools are what we've been talking about so far. But that framework really sets you up for making sure that you are building responsible tools. But we also need the human interaction with this, the individual, the people from diverse backgrounds. And I'll say that again, the people from diverse backgrounds. If you have one person doing the same thing over and over again, you're going to get the results from that individual and not from the collective group. One of the products that we built this into is the Microsoft 365 Copilot. Now, we use this every day. I think right now it's available for a lot of our internal teams to be able to use it for the tools. And as Angela mentioned, for example, if we want to build a PowerPoint, the difference is, and it's not actually just doing the work for you, it's making it easier for you to get more done. Because you still need that human interaction. If I told it to build a PowerPoint for me, I still have to choose what slides I want and where. But I don't have to go searching for 10,000 images. I don't have to go looking for text or lines of code that I need to fit in there. It automatically finds that for you and allows you to organize it in your own way. Same thing with the Word document. We built it into the product itself. Outlook, when I'm doing searches for specific individuals that I want to speak to, or opportunities where I'm helping a customer find a great product, I can use the Copilot in Outlook to do that. Or in Teams, if you've ever used Teams or Teams meetings, you want to be able to document what has happened during that meeting. And so our tools, the tools around ChatGPT and OpenAI, will give you that information so that it summarizes it based on what it heard and how it does the OCR, not the OCR, but the language translation in terms of analyzing the data that you've received so far. So that's just the beginning of it.
I'll say summarizing a 3-hour meeting or summarizing an email where you don't have to put TLDR at the top of it is, like a game changer, because you don't have to read this whole long email. We have to scroll through it. You can kind of get the summary of the email. You can get the summary of a 3-hour meeting that you didn't attend and you don't want to listen to 3 hours worth of playback. So
what I'll say is I have a lot of executives that I'll say, you know what, hey, why don't we record the call? They're like, no, we'll never watch that session, ever. And so having a summary of it, she just says, yeah, I know what you mean. No, exactly. But having a quick summary, 4, 5, 6, 7 bullet points that I can send over to the executive admin and say, hey, here's those items that we talked about. Here's the task that he or she needs to do, is so much more helpful. And that's what we talk about, being involved. So we've gone from this idea of giving information to the concept of Copilot. So from autopilot to Copilot, which is where we want to take things moving forward. Everybody still with me? See, a couple people showed up, so thank you guys for showing up. Uh, so as we're going to move into what we call responsible AI, and this is a huge part of when we're thinking about where we're going next from a technology standpoint, what are we doing to ensure that data, that information remains clean? That's the best way I could put it. And clean is probably the best way to do it. So Microsoft itself, we've taken on our own AI principles. And I also honestly believe that many companies, most companies should adopt this so that they can ensure what information, the information they're using in terms of gathering and the rules that they're using to gather the information stays pristine. So we're committed to it by using fairness, making sure that we are, again, we have a link for you that we'll share with you guys, but around responsible futures in AI, reliability and safety, making sure that no one gets hurt during the process, making sure that we have privacy and security. I know my friends here on the security team are really big on security and protecting your information and protecting your data. Inclusiveness. Again, this is a big part for our community. We need to think about how do we make sure that when we have a certain set of data, that everyone has an opportunity to input what that data is, not just one segment of people. Yes. Just put it that way. And we talk about this all the time. So transparency, right? We talk about making sure people know what's happening. If I'm pulling information about what's going on in the traffic in Dallas, I need to make sure that the right people are involved in it and they're aware that that data is being collected. If I'm collecting license plates or anything like that, that transparency is important. And lastly, accountability. If I run something and I get the wrong information, I need to be able to report, hey, I've gotten the wrong information, and being accountable for that data. So these are the principles that we build into it. Given that we only have an hour, I won't go too far into depth with it. There is a link that I can share with you guys to learn a little bit more around the responsible AI and give you some insight into how we think about this. We think about when we talk about responsible AI standards, setting this as an organization really requires you to think around the principles. What are my principles? What do I have to do to make sure I'm providing the right set of guidance to the team? And then the goals, like what are those goals that I need to achieve? In other words, I want to make sure that everyone has access to a certain set of data, or everyone has the ability to write the same line of code, or we can actually review the information in there and then remove data that doesn't need to be there. I want to set requirements as well. Like, what are my requirements in terms of how inclusive do I need to be? What information do I need to have? And then lastly, just the tools. Which tools am I going to use? What platform am I going to be on? And these are all what we call an anatomy of the responsible AI standard. This is how some of these things are created for you. Yeah, got the.
And one of the things that I know a lot of people say about, Copilot for GitHub and, the tools that you can make you code using AI is, like, I spent all those years learning how to program. That's not fair to me, and that's like pretty much what everybody in here can relate to. A person coming straight out of college that majored in psychology, can now be on your same level and coding right next to you. But the concept behind it is you can learn any language in 5 hours versus them who rely solely on AI. And I just told you, AI will confidently lie to you. So sometimes, when it comes into the debugging part and comes into the more complex data structures, they're not going to have the same knowledge of being able to work around those things as you are.
One thing we'll say is these concepts are also just as important. If you end up having to take the AI fundamentals course, they ask you a lot of these questions around what do you understand about responsible AI, and understanding the anatomy of it is a big part of it. Even more so as you go into what we talk about the sensitive uses, right? When I think about the sensitive uses around rulemaking, how do I go about deciding on the engine or the tool that I'm using? In this sense, if I needed to gather information about everybody's age in this room, what's the consequential impact? Somebody's going to be upset, right? Yeah. It's like, nah, not me. I'm good. We don't age. That's right. Black people don't crack. That's right. So you got to look at the consequential impact of what data sets you're working with and how you're going to ensure that everybody that you're not harming anyone, you're not creating any concerns for anyone, and that's part of what we think about when we talk about responsible AI. Secondly, you have to think about the physical or psychological injury, or scenarios where somebody may actually be in mental or physical pain. And ensure that when you're making those decisions around how your tool runs, how your data is gathered, that those aspects are considered as well. And lastly is threat to human rights, right? We see all the people protesting about different things. We've got to be able to understand that if we're building solutions around AI, generative AI, how does it affect the human rights, whether it's, if we can talk about any community from the Glean community, am I ensuring that I'm protecting those individuals during that process? And again, these are things that Microsoft takes very seriously from a solution standpoint. Okay, so the last piece of this before we get into some examples is the pioneering responsibilities of AI practices. In other words, where does that come from? So Microsoft is essentially helping organizations take a more holistic approach to responsible AI across just the development cycle, and by making available just leading researchers of practical guidance and tooling and innovation. So as we've been basically rolling out our responsible AI solutions across different companies, we have basically had to ask about the existence of like engineering systems and tools to help deliver on that request. And of course, the tooling, particularly in its most technical sense, really is not capable of that deep human-centered thinking, that work that needs to be done in conceiving the AI systems. So what do we need to do? We have to make sure that we're building tools that can essentially take advantage of that. And so you'll see that come across our different products itself. And those positions are where they're looking to hire more of us. AI, I'm going to keep saying that over and over again. They are retooling people to find them for positions that can help build these engines, because these AI technologies are not going to run themselves. They need smart people that are willing to take the challenge. And I can guarantee you most of the people that have ventured into the AI world and are finding job opportunities are learning it within the last 2 to 3 years. It's a very new process in terms of how we think about technology. So the tooling piece is a very important part of that, especially when it comes to responsible AI practices. And I just want to make sure that's clear for you guys as well. When we think about the governments and public policy, right, this is another area where we're seeing a lot of growth in terms of regulating attention to AI. Now, how many people, when you hear the word AI, what's the first word that comes to mind? Anybody? Robots. Robots. If you did a search in ChatGPT, you ask, what's the first term? Robots. You're like, oh no, they're coming. They're coming. But it's that big of a deal, because we have this block. I wouldn't say block, but we have this misconception that AI is essentially robots. It's automated process. It will continue to evolve, but it shouldn't. It's really designed by us. I would say for us, by us, but we're not designing it.
Right.
We're working on it. But it is robots, and it's not robots, but it's kind of robots. What is it? You tell me.
It's human interaction. It's human, like you input your feelings, your knowledge into it, and it's just shooting back to you, and it's summarizing my information that I've input to it, your information, and everybody in this room's information, and it's spitting it back out to you in one concise thought. Like you saw the word clouds. Word clouds was a first generation of a not the first, but one of the generations of artificial intelligence.
So it's really what you see, what you build is what you get. We have to be part of that building process. And so those policies that are coming up are essentially designed to regulate what you're actually building. So one of the big asks is, again, I keep saying, it's not just about being a technical engineer. It's not just being about being a mechanical engineer. There's positions in terms of HR and legal and finance and security that are focused on AI. In fact, my brother works at Microsoft. His role is, AI. I can't remember, but it's pretty cool.
He's in cloud and AI.
Cloud and AI.
Oh,
My bad. I don't know.
I don't even know where your brother is.
I can't keep up. It's a good guy though. I like him.
I like him.
So going forward, we want to make sure you have some resources on this specific topic, and AK.ms responsible AI resources will give you some insight into those areas for governance systems, new research and policies. Microsoft is going to continue to develop on it because it's a part of the path. You cannot just do AI. You cannot just do generative AI. You also have to build in responsible AI to ensure that you regulate what people are doing with it and for it. The next section really goes into the tooling system. Some of the tools that you'll see, we've seen Bing Chat. We tested out the ability to basically use that as a search engine to find information. So Microsoft has made that as a centralized component for doing searches. I know when I say, this is a funny term, I got to tell this because this is slightly different, but I'm going to ask you guys this. When I say, I need you to go find something about the Titanic on the web, what's the first thing you're going to do? I'm going to ask you. You're going to say it again? You're going to Google it. But if you were in 2002, 2003, what would you have said? I'm just going to go look. You'd be like,
Yahoo.
Yahoo or Ask Jeeves.
How about
right?
Ask Jeeves was the
You'd be like, easy.
Ask Jeeves.
Yeah, I looked it up on Bing. I looked it up on ChatGPT. I don't know nothing about it. But yeah, you wouldn't say Google back then. You would say, I don't even know what would you have said back then?
did. Yeah, Ask Jeeves.
Yeah.
But we just searched
Netscape
it.
Navigator was that.
Netscape Navigator.
Netscape Navigator.
But we just said I'm gonna go search it on the web.
You're
Like
gonna
we
search
didn't say I'm gonna Google it.
So
Google it became a verb.
It became a verb. So you could see in the last 20 years, somehow what is a Google? What's a Google? Yeah, it's now it is because we built it. We made it what it is. In fact, Explorer would have made more sense if I said go find the Titanic, but let me go Explorer, right? Nobody picked up on it, right?
No one picked up.
So we called it Bing. Anyway, so my point is, in Bing, you can actually do some really extensive searches and find some really good information. We've built in Bing Chat to give you that capability, and it will, again, essentially search across the web to find a conglomerate of the answers that you're looking for.
So how many people have done a research? How many people have done a search for a research paper and you've had to Google and you had to click, multiple times. You had to click multiple links to get some information from this site, some information from that site. Yes, everyone has. And it's very annoying. What Bing Chat does is aggregates the information that you found, and it will give you a concise information, printout of the answer that you're searching for. So if you're trying to do a research paper on the Titanic, it will aggregate all the sites and it will give you resources at the end to tell you where they got that source from. So if you want to dig into it a little bit more, you can. And that's one of the things I think is pretty cool about it. And you can download it on your phone and not do it all the time. So there you go.
Well, in addition to that, that's actually a good point. In the chat experience, you can also ask for it to follow up questions.
Yes.
Can you explain that in simpler terms? You can just basically type that in and it will look at what you just wrote and essentially try to explain it to you in a way that makes sense. So it actually is very much a learn as you go tool. And that's, again, Bing Chat is just one of those technologies. The other one you'll see, which it leverages what we call cognitive services, is the custom neural voice solution. Again, this is a solution that's in Azure. We work with a lot of customers that are looking for this. And this is leveraging the AI voice technology to empower customers when you're deploying assistive technology for people with things like speech impairments or, online learning or, looking for ways to do translations. And whatever you're looking for, you can actually type that in and it'll basically give you the opportunity to build that language model using cognitive services. Now, the data still sits in the cloud. That cloud is still secure, but it gives you the capability to leverage it in a cloud-based platform. A couple examples again, I'm just going to show you this is an example of us what we're using at the Microsoft 365, where I'm asking it for it to tell me a little bit about how my meeting went. And in this case, it's basically giving you a quick summary of your I always remember, I forget what SWOT stands for. Something, strength, weaknesses, opportunity. He knew, come on, bro, you got this.
Read.
No, I read SWOT. Yeah, you're right. Listen, I know SWOT. I just don't use it. I just say SWOT all the time. But that's what it is. That's what it does. But it can summarize your meetings for you. And it can give you what the best approaches to finding, content, to being able to focus on what you needed to do for the meetings are. And that's what we call a Microsoft 365 Copilot built in. The other side of that is basically being able to use, we have a tool called Viva or CRM, and we can use that within the tool to do searches and find intelligent information. I know I'm not paying attention to her, but I'm kidding. I'm almost done. And you can do searches on, she's like, I already know what she's about to ask. But you can use that to find information about which customers you're working with, what challenges you're having, and essentially summarize how you can work with your workflow. We also have Copilot built into things like Power BI, so you have to automate, maybe joining somebody to a group and then adding them to a chat team, or making sure that they're getting a specific email. You can automate that using Copilot automatically. All right, my bad, young lady in the back. Yep, the SWOT one. Yeah, so what it is Microsoft has a tool called Copilot, which is slowly being rolled out right now. Organizations that are looking for ways to leverage the engine behind it can subscribe to it, and essentially gets added to your subscription in your team's infrastructure. So for example, if you're in a meeting and you have a meeting, you turn on Copilot with Loop, it will basically gather the data that's been discussed in that call, analyze it, and put it into segments so that you can see what your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities and threats are. And you don't have to sit down for 2 hours, 45 minutes and try to figure out what those are, because it automatically, intelligently figures out what was being discussed during that call by that individual. So that translates to time saved for the organization, time saves for that individual that's looking for data, and it simplifies what they do on a day-to-day basis. Now, I can guarantee you a lot of customers are looking for this as a solution. And if your business isn't necessarily looking at this, I would highly encourage them to look at that, because that's going to free up a number of resources and reduce cost or spend all up for our customers.
And for a more personal analysis of some things that went on, we have the even using Bing Chat as well, or sorry, not Bing Chat, the Bing for Copilot. One of the things that it can do is it can create a schedule for you. So if you're really bad at planning, or if you need a personal assistant like I do, it can create a schedule. So I had my daughter all summer long. So I was asking it to create a schedule, find camps for me that would keep her from such and such time to such and such time. And it actually found like camps near me it found camps in Virginia and Maryland that she could go to, that how much they would cost to attend, and it kind of did that analysis for me that I would have spent hours doing that research. I did it from the comfort of my bed on my phone at like 2:00 in the morning. By 2:15, I had signed her up for a couple of camps this summer. So, I mean, it just takes that process out of you having to do so many things, and like the Copilot things really help when on a personal aspect as well as a business aspect.
Yeah, I'm going to restate this again. If you're not using these technologies now, don't stop waiting, right? I'm literally saying that because everyone else is going to start using it, and you don't want to be the last one to get on the platform. There's nothing to fear. All right, question? Great question. So the question was, is Microsoft Copilot being only released to certain customers? What's happened with Copilot in terms of how it's being rolled out is there was a call for customers that were high priority customers that would invest in it, and those are the ones that are first starting to get the capabilities built into their systems and the subscriptions had. There's a long wait list of individuals or of customer demand for this. So that's why I keep saying, if you and your organization aren't necessarily considering it, I would highly suggest that you say something to your leadership team and ask them, hey, have we started looking at some of the AI technologies built into our products?
But one of the things you can use for free, again, I'm gonna keep saying it, is Bing for Copilot. Like I said, you can download it on your phone right now, and you can kind of show, like, if you're that kind of person that can, persuade your company to do something, you can show them the power behind it and why it's useful and stuff like that by, downloading it putting it on your computer or downloading it on your phone. So
Yeah. It isn't just a better way of doing the same thing. It's basically changing the way you work. Now, if there's one statement I want you guys to go away with, that's it. It's got to change the way you work. When I look for, I'm sitting next to Angela and I'm talking about, hey, I got to do X, Y, Z. She's like, boom, 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 boom. I'm like, yo, that's crazy. Not once, not twice, but at least 4 or 5 times. And I'm like, why am I sitting here writing this whole document this way and that way? But it is a powerful tool and it gives you a lot more time to focus on it. But great question, young lady in the back, and man. So love it.
yes.
All right.
Do you think that industry will trend towards reducing the number of hours work or increasing the number of the output of the workers with the same schedule?
Let me repeat that. The question was, do you think that the industry reduce the number of hours people work and replace it with more? That is the number one fallacy that people think about. And I'll give you a great example. If you go back to when the cars in the car factory were built and they started bringing in computer systems in to manage it, it wasn't that people initially lost jobs, but it actually created more jobs because they found other things that they can work on. So what will happen with technology when autopilot, copilot, AI gets ingrained in there, it's going to take away a lot of those menial tasks that we do that can be done by a system that's been built. And it's going to create more refined processes, refined opportunities to advance in technology. You'll find new areas to work in, like a HoloLens or virtual reality and augmented reality. So think of it more of a shift than it is an elimination of opportunities. That makes sense? So
Go ahead. One more.
This might be political, I guess, but in regards to at least what you were saying about a shift, I'm just thinking right now though about for example, the Screen Actors Guild and their strike. They said they were trying to protect their jobs against AI.
mm-hmm.
It seems like it might counter at least that shift that you mentioned very well with.
I love that statement. So basically, the Screen Actors Guild, a number of them are basically being displaced because of AI, and they're looking for ways to make sure that they have an opportunity. That's going to continue to happen. What they're going to have to do is reinvent themselves. I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that's just the trend of where technology is going. I mean, we're seeing people building lyrics, with Jay-Z and Biggie without having that person around and putting into music and putting video streaming. There are people that are building those technologies, and you want to be those individuals that are building those technologies. So your skill sets are going to have to change, right? It's just, I think that's the only way we can explain it. Your skill sets are going to have to change. Your area of expertise may have to be adjusted. And I do feel for a lot of the SAG folks that are in that situation, but that's just the nature of what's happening right now.
And going into the music aspect, I don't know if everybody heard, it was an AI generated image who was a rapper, and he was the first AI generated image to get signed. And he was a gangster rapper, and he said the N-word all the time and talked about ladies being B's and H's, and turned out it was a white guy behind it. And so, that's some of the things that we have to protect ourselves against, is that, there can be anybody behind this, and what's coming out, again, everything that he wanted to probably say in real life and that he couldn't as a white man, he formulated himself into an AI generated Black man and was then able to accept it, be accepted and to say the N-word all the time. And he got signed by Motown too, which was the craziest thing. So, so we have that going on.
So we're going to boycott Motown now.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
One thing that this is saying, I'm gonna use my best after just like we pay their TV shows are recurring, you get a check.
So
So some of the stuff.
very similar. I'm not going to repeat what you said, but basically you said it's very similar to web searching and how people use the web to find information and realizing that, hey, we can actually get paid if I'm having some sort of, taxing, whatever. But it does kind of defer a little bit with what the gentleman said, mainly because of the way the images are being generated. It's not using a real person. It can use a generated person to build a better generated person, which is a very interesting concept. I don't have the answer with where that's going, but we can definitely see that there's a trend that it's not going to go away anytime soon, right? So. Yes. Exactly. Which is why responsible AI and managing it in the public sector is such an important opportunity. You're going to see a lot of jobs opening up in that space, that if you become the expert in that space, it's an easy win for you and a long-term opportunity. Oh, so what we have is what we call Copilot with Power BI. It's essentially automates some of the tooling that you use in Power BI. Remember, if you've ever worked in Power BI, you have to think of the logic, you got to find the accounts, you have to connect it to the SharePoint site. You got to, by the time you get done, you got gray hair and it's 5 o'clock in the morning. You're like, so Copilot will help you say, I want to do X, Y, and Z with A, B, C. And it'll essentially say, okay, it's in the Power BI. It'll basically use that tool to start building a replica of what you need. And of course, you still have creative power to remove and add what you need, but it makes your life a whole lot simpler, especially if you're new to that space and you want to understand how to make things happen. They're all, so Word, Excel, PowerPoint, all the productivity tools, we're seeing that become integrated into the product itself. Bing, Outlook, Search, Teams. Again, I didn't want to go to the detail. Azure Cloud Services. I can barely think of any product we have right now they're not trying to figure out how to build an AI into it. Yeah. Great questions. Did somebody in the back have a question or no? If not, we'll keep going. All right, we're gonna get to the fun part. This is the part that I get to step away and give it to my colleague.
Okay, now we got to talk about the cool stuff for me, the security in AI. So we have to think about all of the things that could go wrong in AI. We have to think about making sure that your data is private. We have to make sure that you don't get attacked. We have to make sure that there's bias and fairness in it and that it's robust. So what do we mean in that? So we want to make sure your data is private. We have things like containers. We keep things in subscriptions. We keep things in our own separate tenants. But once you integrate AI into that, is your data still secure? Is your data still, can anybody get your data? We have metadata in pictures where when that first started coming out, when we had digital pictures, people were able to take your metadata. They can find out exactly where you took that picture. And that's why that's not secure. So we have to make sure that as you generate your AI, as you have your AI data being, exposed to the web, that people can't find out who you are, what you're doing, where you're going, everything like that, because we do use AI on the go. Like I told you, I use Bing for Copilot for Bing on my phone. I have to make sure that when I'm doing those searches that nothing is tagged. So I don't do it under me, obviously. The adversarial attacks, we want to make sure that the AI makes sure, we want to make sure that your data is in we want to guard AI's integrity. We want to make sure that we have nobody can attack your system. We want to make sure that no negative things are getting input into the system. And how we have done some of that already is that OpenAI used a manual team that had to go through the data and scrub all of the not safe for work information off of the internet. Now, that has psychological damage to the people because people had to look at things such as, people had to look at some very not safe for work things. I'll just put it like that. We are at a professional convention, so I don't want to go into that specifically, but anything that's not safe for work that you wouldn't pull up on your job, that's what they had to look at, and they had to scrub that from ChatGPT, giving you that as an answer, or sending you to that specific web page. As you look at ChatGPT now, there is nothing that you can look up that is not safe for work, and it will give you an answer. It will tell you right now, I cannot find that information, and that includes ChatGPT 4. And I think that they're going to start integrating some of that into more of the paid versions of ChatGPT. But right now, everything on there has been scrubbed from all of the negative content and a lot of the controversial content, such as like who won the 2020 elections. It will tell you who is the current president. It won't tell you about the riots and everything and what some of the controversial issues behind that. When we talk about fairness and bias mitigation methods, we want to make sure that if you as a Black person are walking into a store, it recognizes that you are a Black person and not you are a white person. It wants to make sure that I'm 5'10" and that I'm represented as a 5'10" Black woman and not a 5'4" white woman. One of the things that comes to mind, we're going to show you a couple of things that come to mind. We're going to show you in the next couple of slides. And we also want to make sure that our systems are hardened, making sure that nobody can come in and attack them, make sure nobody can create a chat GPT, which you actually can create a system within chat GPT that can do anything. And it's called Dan. So you can if you search Dan on the internet, you can say, do anything now, and it will do anything. But again, your data, ChatGPT will confidently lie to you, as will Dan. So what happens when AI goes wrong? So we have a lot of things that that people have made using AI. So one of the things was Pulse, which was an algorithm that was it took pixelated images and it turned them into high resolution images. Now, one of those things is it turned Barack Obama into a white man. It turned this guy who looks like he's from overseas, I'll just say it like that, and it turned him into a white man. And it gave him some hair that doesn't even look like that could be his hair at all. It took AOC, it changed her nose, it changed her eyebrows, it changed everything about her, and it turned her into a white woman. So as you see that it doesn't recognize our noses, our lips, the fullness in our lips, our eyes and cheekbones. So
I think the other part to note about this is if you are the engineer, if you are involved in this space, part of what we need people to do is to essentially build the algorithms to correctly identify how to, alter images so that it doesn't end up being just the white guy or just the white woman. Like that's really what it comes down to. So the input is based on the individuals that are a part of it. That's the inclusive nature of it. And part of that, we're asking each of you to get into the spaces. We need that support because without our data, without our input, without our changes, that happens.
And that's also one of the reasons why we need to be involved. So the next story will speak for
so this before you click it.
Okay.
So this is actually happening right now. We want to share with you something that we think is very central to the change we want to see happen. And this is an actual live situation that came up.
So I said, warrant for what? What is the warrant for? She hesitated. She procrastinated. She didn't want to, give me any information. She just wanted me to step outside so that I could be arrested. So I continued to ask. Another police officer stepped up and interjected. He did say that I had a warrant for my arrest for carjacking. In the midst of the conversation, I opened up my door a little bit wider so she could see, so that they could see, I was 8 months pregnant. And I also pointed to my cars that were in the driveway at the time. I'm like, I'm 8 months pregnant and, I have a car right there. Why would I carjack anyone? No one was listening to me. No one would listen to me. No one would take what I was saying seriously. It was as if I was already a suspect, So with that being said, that was a traumatizing experience. It still is. My kids are afraid. I'm afraid. The police get beside me or behind me, I go in a panic mode instantly. My children go in a panic mode instantly. My kids thought I would have been shot. They seen police officers on my doorstep, you know, guns on their hips.
This is a real life example of where AI essentially gives information that's incorrect and law enforcement act on it based on the data that they have. If we had intelligent systems, and I'll use the word intelligent systems very carefully, that could correctly provide the information, this sort of situation would not happen. And in order to build those systems, we need people that understand how to code those algorithms and make sure that the AI is responsible in terms of what it does. And those are the opportunities that we're seeing come up within the industry. Okay. All right, question? You said in that situation, common sense took over. How do you fix it?
No, he didn't take over. So I mean, I can even go more personal. In 2004, there's everybody knows about the FBI Most Wanted record. 2004, Angela Clayton was on the FBI Most Wanted list. I was heading home to my family reunion, and they had the information about this woman who was in the FBI Most Wanted list, which it comes with pictures, it comes with descriptions, and it was a red-headed 5'4" white woman. I was detained for 12 hours. I missed all of my family reunion because I was detained for 12 hours because I had the name Angela Clayton, which is why most of the time when you see me write my stuff, I use my middle initial so that I'm not confused with this 5'4" white woman who's on the FBI Most Wanted list. And so, I mean, common sense doesn't take over in law enforcement all the time. So, I mean, they go off of data that they're given and they kind of just act. And then that's why they aren't the judges and the jury and prosecutors. They are just law enforcement. So it kind of stops there.
Another example might be when you're dealing with loans, housing loans, where people are looking for opportunities to get, some sort of discounts in the loans. The system itself, AI is being built into the back-end system. So it might say that if you are a Black or African American, you're not qualified for as good loans as your white counterparts, right? And so when the person is basically issuing the loan for the home, it'll basically say, well, you're not qualified. And you'll say, why? Well, because because you meet a certain criteria because of what's been put in the system. And that's what the system's spitting back to them. We're trying to correct that so that whatever information that they're providing you is actually accurate and not based on the, implied bias. Make sense?
Yeah.
So if you use the tool to create your own logo or anything like that, do they own it from a creative standpoint? As long as it isn't owned by somebody else, yeah.
Exactly.
Again, that's what I'm saying. And the tool could have went to the web and found information, right? Let's say the tool goes in and finds a Microsoft logo and says, make me a Microsoft logo. Oh, that's mine now, but it's really not, right? So it just depends on what's created out of it. That creative power is the individual that put it in. But again, it's still a murky area that we're still trying to figure out because, it's searching the web. And anything on the web is essentially considered fair game. But then again, it's not, right? So we're going to try to wrap this up because I know the time's running. The session again was the future of work in AI. How will AI impact your opportunities? And we're going to end it with about 7 different ways that it benefits us in the Black community. The first I'm going to mention is job creation and economic growth. Like we actually believe that as AI gets adopted in the industry, you're going to see that happening where people are going to take advantage of this, where it's building new job opportunities, creating new scenarios where people can actually be employed, employ other individuals, and build your own businesses. So keep that in mind. It's not something that's taking jobs away. It's actually building opportunities. Secondly, it's going to help with education and skilling. You know, we've done a lot, myself and Angela, we've done a lot of work with our summer mentorship students, about 130 different students, where we're basically teaching them on how to use these tools. And they're going to be using it as they go off to college, so they can do their coding homework, their essays, their papers, all that fun stuff, right? Yeah. And they're going to put rules around that too. Health equity is another one where you're going to see, we're going to see more of that being created from an equity standpoint, because we know there's a lot of inequities in healthcare today. We have to figure out ways to make sure that those tools are essentially built so we can have better health equity as well. The next one is entrepreneurship, that we mentioned before, and innovation. You are the creative person behind this. You are the person using the engines to create the new things. So if you're looking for opportunities for growth, innovation is in front of you, and this is where AI kind of steps in. Criminal justice reform, we see a lot of people getting incarcerated for the wrong reasons. We see a lot of people getting accused for the wrong reasons. And we see this as a benefit for us, because if we're able to correct the systems that give us that data, we win. Or we're better off, one of the two. I don't know. You know, and financial inclusion. So we mentioned sort of the example of the loans. We want to make sure that when these systems are being used to identify who's qualified for certain benefits, loans, we are also eligible for those loans, and not based on historical biases or historical data. Again, a lot of those systems are archaic. They're asking people to come in and rewrite the systems so that it's much more inclusive. You want to be part of that process and part of that, you know, new system that gets built. And lastly is community development, making sure that you're giving back to your local community, from having you know, access to Wi-Fi in rural locations, to making sure students and family members have access to networks and connections and communication tools. That's where AI becomes sort of that empowering aspect within our world and our environment. And the last piece is, go ahead.
Oh, so the last piece is, we're going to leverage ChatGPT for writing. You want to set it
Yeah,
up?
I'm going to say that.
So if anybody wants to take a screenshot of this prompt is literally what I'll be putting into it. And this prompt is, so prompt engineering is not new. Prompt engineering was what you did when you asked Jeeves. You know, so like prompt engineering is just coming up with a better way to search and telling, you know, talking to it like it was a human. So we want to make sure that the ChatGPT thinks it's a seasoned recruiter. It doesn't know what a seasoned recruiter is, but we've put so much information into the web that it can search a job description that tells you what a seasoned recruiter is. And they wanted to build a resume for an engineer who's had 20 years of experience working at Microsoft. They came through the ranks. They've gone from, you know, a developer, and now they're a PM manager, which is PM, project manager, program manager. It's all
We're going to use ChatGPT to do some searches and actually do some writing. So prompting, you're a seasoned recruiter, build a resume for an engineer who's been working at Microsoft for 20 years in multiple roles, moving up the ranks each year from a developer to a PM manager. So we're going to go straight to ChatGPT. Now you see I've already done some of this already, but I'm going to type this again. But I'm going to add a few things here. You're a seasoned technical sales recruiter. We want you to build a resume for an engineer a sales engineer who has been working at Microsoft for 13 years. We just changed some of the formulas, right? And multiple roles, make moving up the ranks each year from a developer to a PM manager. So we want to see what we'll do. So in 13 years, what's happening? So we're going to run that. It's going to basically use that in the context of the individual, and it's going to start writing the details. Experienced sales engineer with a remarkable 13 years. Senior project manager, 2014. Technical sales engineer, 2011 to 2014. Software developer, right? It basically puts all the information you're looking for into a single document. And there it is, all of your details right there for you to actually take a look at and see what you're capable of putting together. Then from there, what we can do, we can actually take this one step further. We can now tell it to use additional information. So we're going to grab, you are an expert. I'm just going to write it down here. You are an expert coach with 20 years of experience landing technical sales jobs. Create a cover letter using the resume and job description below. And guess where we're going to get that resume? Right from here. Boom. We're going to grab all the details about this information that we just put in here. We're going to pop it in the bottom here and tell ChatGPT to figure out right? So there we go. We tell ChatGPT to put that information together. It says, no problem. I'll do that for you. I'm writing to express my strong interest in the sales engineering position at company X as advertised in Y. It writes all the details, tells about the experience, what they're excited about. Thank you for considering. And this is the beginning of telling your story, telling your, how you can put together your resume. Again, this is all customizable because you're just basically creating something that you can use to write it. So now we're just going to copy this in, and there, you're pretty much done. You can modify what you need. Obviously, you're gonna have to change a few lines of code. You're gonna have to update a few things, but it saves you from having to start this from scratch or borrowing it from somebody else, right? So that's the important piece here. So that's the beauty of where generative AI and these solutions really can speed up your process of getting the data that you're looking for. That's what we're here to do. So in conclusion, let's go through some of these details around what we've learned so far.
So like there's different ways you can get involved into it around it. You have other?
Yeah, I think the big piece around getting involved is if you look in any job search website, what you'll find is that there are positions that are being posted for AI. Look for the language of AI, generative AI. Look for that in your job search. Make that part of your job search engine. And what you'll find is you'll start to pick up on those opportunities that are leveraging that technology. Second of all, once you do find them and you're looking at job description, you may not meet all the requirements because some of it may be new to you. What you're going to want to do is make sure you write down the term. Say, for example, it says, machine learning, or it says something about cognitive services. Go do the research on those specific positions or those specific technologies. There's free lessons on how you can learn about the topic. There's YouTube content. And once you spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes testing it out, using it on the tool, write it on your resume, right?
Exactly.
Put it on your resume, because then it shows that you are much more qualified for the opportunity, and it positions you to basically prepare you for the next opportunity. So think about what happens when you do interviews. People will ask you questions. Do you know what cognitive services are? Do you know what machine learning are? And if you know the terms and you understand it, that's where you start getting into the opportunity. The real work starts when you actually get the job.
Right.
So, all right. So with that, was that helpful for everybody? Was this good? Good. We want to make sure that if you do have further questions or if you're interested in finding out more, again, my name is Alfred Ojukwu. I'm out of the Connecticut, New York area, and I'm also here with Angela Clayton, who's also out of the DC area. So
Yes.
We invite you to connect with us on LinkedIn. We thank you guys for staying here for the extra 10 minutes that we took up of your time, and enjoy the rest of NSBE.
All right. Thanks.